Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I'm going to work on these Stump the Professor questions. Long awaited. I don't really feel like I'm giving answers as I'm just responding to your discussions. I always like to qualify that because there's no way I can have the answer for a lot of these questions. I can just have perspective that I can add. All of you are coming with your own wealth of experiences. And if you asked a different person from a different field, you could get a really valid answer from a totally different point of view. So we want to always acknowledge that in this kind of exercise that we're doing in trying to create dialogue in our online spaces, learning spaces. So, creative, cool communicators, you're up. Thanks, team. I feel like I love that title. Hello, creative, cool communicators. Welcome to your responses to your Stump the Professor questions. Let's get started. I just feel like it has like a cool podcast vibe. So the first question is, how would we measure the level of expertise someone has and not offend them in the process of during a complicated situation? Okay, there's a lot here to go at, and especially complicated. We always want to remember that we're using the idea of complicated as introduced by Snowden and friends in the Cynefin framework and the Cynefin theory. So complicated. I love going at the problem this way. Well, I think it's just like when you are trying to go into a complicated, you're recognizing that this problem has existed before. You just don't know it, but maybe someone else does. So if you're going to be trying to figure out who to assign this problem to, whether you're going to go outside the group or outside the corporation, or the organization and go to a consulting group, or are you within organization and looking for a different expertise to bring in to solve the problem? I think it's good to go at it as you need to ask a few questions before you assign someone, just like a open interview process of really being clear and candid about what is needed and does this person have what it takes to step into a role to help identify, problem solve, create solutions, viable solutions. And we definitely want to get that human piece in it, which means there is a little bit of asking someone to say, how I think that like you could ask questions like, how do you, here's what is happening. I don't really have a lot of experience with this. How would you define this problem? Or how would you look at this? And ask them and then listen. Listen to how they define the problem. And it's if they're coming at it from a completely different point of view, that's what you're looking for. But you're also looking, are they giving you general plateaus of information or generalizations or moving into like a marketing kind of way? Oh, I'm here to solve your problem because does it feel a little canned? Maybe canned is the right word. Uh, or are they really, oh, yes. So there was a company I worked with before that had a similar issue. When we came in, this is what we ended up doing. And then you could follow up with a processy question like, and really trying to get to the layers of qualifying the information based on, are they rubber stamping a solution? Like, oh, I know what your problem is, and this is the solution. Or are they like, oh, yes, when you are faced with a problem like this, we need to do A, B, and C, and then figure out how we can best get to your goal, right? So you want to see if you can, are they coming in with a rubber stamp, or are they coming in with a more nuanced approach and understanding that every location, every work group, even if they've seen the problem 100 times, locations and people are unique and human. And are they coming at it with that idea of process to unravel the human component of the problem and the human pieces of the solution that could benefit? And is it okay to make a mistake? I mean, I feel like we don't want to offend someone. If someone is really authentic, they're going to say, "Hey, yeah, it took us a it took me a lot of mistakes and failures to figure this out." Do people own up to that? Is it okay, or are we just looking for like a real big trap? And this is really important in our modern world. Modern meaning our kind of the way we're encapsulating time, online, AI, tools that are really helping us drive in a completely different way, that it's driving us towards product, the end, the deliverable as being the component of success. But we're going to see a movement, and this is for everybody in the class, even if this isn't your question. We are going to start seeing a really strong movement of imperfection, crafting, human elements, emails that have spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes as being a indicator, a nonverbal channel, an indicator that you're dealing with a human and not an AI, and our processes matter. So I guess I'm wondering, um, if you're asking someone a question and they're offended and not want to be clear about their nuance and their process and how they get to solutions, that might be a product of, that might be a product, no, that might be an indicator that someone is driving only for product, the fini, the end, instead of the journey. And you really are looking for an expertise of someone who's willing to embrace the journey and the imperfections that come with it. And that's why Cynefin Theory, and why I've been driving this for you, is because it is a nonlinear approach. It really, the sense making piece, the piece of identification that it's looking for the process of problem solving is the is what you're supposed to be doing, not always having the solution right away. So watch out for these kind of traps. There's a lot of different ways to answer this question, this idea of not offend them. We definitely want to, that could take a lot of unpacking, which I'm not sure I have time in this type of video. But, it does tie into the themes of trust in this term that we've been looking through, and how much concern we have for not offending someone should be something we should throw the flag on the play. And if someone is highly reactive or highly sensitive, uh, maybe that's more of an indicator of whether you want to put them on the job of complicated problem solving or not. Just something to think about. Okay. How would employees speak up against toxic? This is the second question. How would employees speak up against toxic classical management practices? And the word toxic is a word that we're using a lot for in all different kinds of situations. There's toxic relationship, toxic communication, and here we have it applied to toxic classical management practices. I like the word toxic a lot because it really is identifying that when things are at a high level of dysfunction, there is an erosion on your health and well being that needs to be acknowledged. On the other hand, it is a really overused word. And if you use a word like toxic, you should have other ways that you're unraveling that word, and not just using it as a dismissive way to identify someone or this, because it can create more problems if you don't have other ways to drill down on it. So I would reframe this question, of how do you speak up in a dysfunctional, with dysfunctional management practices? Okay, there's lots of ways to answer this. Oh my gosh. Okay, here I go. and again, respond to it is a better way to say it, that classical management means there's a strong hierarchy. So you could be in an entire organization that is really dysfunctional and identify that, is it the entire structure or is it a department, and you're dealing with a management structure in a smaller group that is dysfunctional, but is it indicative of the whole group? Often it is, but and remember, if it's classical management, communication is going one way and not the other way. So we want to think about when it's appropriate to a certain situation. But usually, if you go to HR, I think I've mentioned this before, but if you go to HR, HR is driven by the prime directive to sustain, to be in the legal bounds, the legalities of keeping the organization safe. And this is why sometimes you can tell you're in a really toxic or dysfunctional organization when you go to HR and a lot of work is done to kind of cover up or brush aside the mistake or minimize it, instead, or mistake, or the whatever it is that is the issue. That's a better word, the issue. Um, that's a good indicator that things might be a little more dysfunctional? Or is there other sub areas besides HR that are built into the organization, like an equity and inclusion office? Is there a ombuds office? Is there other kind of, you have HR, which is keeping the organization, but are there other areas? And can you explore? Do you even know if they exist? Can you explore what they do? Who can you talk to about a situation if you're dealing with it on this kind of departmental or, team level, group level within an organization? And if those exist, that's a recognition of the organization that there's a complexity to large groups and the productivity or the missions that need to happen that can't always be solved in this structure or this structure. Of course, the classic way, not classical, the classic, the old school way is union, solidarity. So this is why unions form, is because you're looking for representation when employees don't have power in a more classical management structure. Not everyone has the luxury of a union, and some unions have their own organizational issues that they're dealing with that sometimes feel very dysfunctional. Not all situations are like that. They're very unique from union to union and how they deal with things. But there's usually, if you're dealing with a union, there's uh, meetings, usually a monthly meeting where they check in on things with someone from the organization comes, someone from the union comes. It's usually an open meeting that you can attend, or if you know who your union rep is, you could say, hey, can you address this in your next, God, the word is escaping me for that meeting. Maybe, do one of you have it? One of you have it? I'd love, can you send that to me quick? Not a bargaining, maybe it is a type of bargaining meeting, but there's another meeting name for it, I'm pretty sure. Now, I also think that uh, when you talk to management, your direct manager, you want to always try and use the system of communication, of bringing something up to bring something up. But if it gets stuck in one place, that might be an indicator that it is something's wrong with that. And if you jump over to the next leadership position above this person that you're not feeling heard from, you have to do that with great care. I'm not even sure I fully advise doing it depending on the group you're in, because you could be up against something even worse in your toxic feeling that you're having in your workplace by leapfrogging over management. Because when it starts coming back down, you've got to return to that group. So you want to look for these other ways that might happen. And then if you are stuck, maybe, and it is affecting your health and well being, I know we don't always have choices about being able to move in and out of a job, but finding your friends, finding those friends that you have outside of work and how you develop work and create boundaries of when you're at work and when you're the things you do have power over, like assert your power for what you have power over, like when you clock out and turning off, you know, any way that they can contact you on a personal device. Um, that you need to make some boundaries with that. And that's not always easy to do because we often feel threatened in competitive environments to show up beyond what we're asked to do. I think I just heard Simon Sinek talking about this. What did he say? He said, actually, I'm not sure where I listened to too much stuff. I don't know where I heard it from, but wherever I heard this from, they were talking about someone who had to use PTO whenever they have to go to a doctor's appointment or take time off during the week, but then they were asked to come in for the weekend and they were not given any extra compensation, no extra hours, no overtime, or not even a PTO or an extra sick day added or something. There was no, and they're like, well, no, I can't. You asked me to give that up for anything I have. Now you're asking me to come in on a time that's not designated as part of my job description. I'm going to have to take a pass on that. And that's hard to do because a lot of dysfunctional workplaces really create competition. Because what if a coworker comes in and does it and does your job better? These are things that are often weaponized to make you feel like you don't have a choice. But maybe try exercising that choice and seeing what happens if you feel safe to do that. Please do not do anything that puts your job in jeopardy, puts you, your life, your well-being of being able to pay your bills in jeopardy. I definitely have been on a lot of jobs where I really was stuck and I couldn't do that because I needed the job. And it's just the nature of the beast of workplaces. I, this is, I'm feeling a little nervous answering these questions this time. The last question, question number 3 from our creative cool communicators. Could AI be used as a reliable resource in the complicated domain? Really in all domains? No, it cannot. AI is very limited. And this comes back to what I was saying before. AI is driven towards product. Yes, it could write a poem. Yes, it could give you some viable solutions in a complicated domain. But the truth here's what you need to kind of understand about AI. AI is a language model that is derivative to what is already known and what it has access to. And it is a product that was developed. A, it's not a nonprofit. Um, Chat GPT and AI and these companies that are creating all this are profit companies. That means they're making a product that they want you to use. So the way they create the platforms is not to create friction with you, but really to be reflective and mirror back and make you feel good about about you. If you feel good about you, that is why this is only going to escalate the feeling of loneliness because in true friendship and true collaborative work environments, there is friction, there is conflict, there's pushback, there's what if, it's not a bunch of yes. And AI is like surrounding yourself with yes, yes, yes. You're like, what, we have this problem and we're not sure what to do, and here's all the things that are going wrong, and it's really gonna give you what you gave it, and it's not going to give you a new perspective or a new way to think about it. Um, And sometimes maybe it can help with a solution in a moment, but you're losing the whole purpose of Cynefin theory is to move into non-linear productivity, and really taking advantage of the imperfection of real life and the imperfection of being human, as a way as the steps you need to build confidence, to build teams, to get to know how to move through to towards solutions. um, AI in the form it's in now is nowhere near ready for what real problem solving looks like. Here's like something I did with AI recently. I'm a big reader. I know. I love movies. I love my movies, but I love my books. And I'm a Margaret Atwood and Orwellian or George Orwell, Ray Bradbury. These are like a few of my favorite authors and favorite books. And so I've read some of the books several times, and I was testing my AI with this, my language model. And I said, oh, I need to write this thing about surveillance and trust in the workplace with adding some quotes from George Orwell and Margaret Atwood and Ray Bradbury, and please include a parenthetical resource. Or, like I gave it a lot of things, and it spit out um, a couple of paragraphs for me, and it had the quotes, it had the parenthetical resource for our Atwood and for those three authors. And I know those authors really well. Go to my books, I look them up. They don't exist though, and I do some research. Those quotes did were completely made up in the style of Atwood, in the style of Bradbury, the style of George Orwell, but they were not actually quotes from 1984 or Handmaid's Tale. They were not quotes at all. So that tells me a lot about what the limitation of what AI can do, and how it poses in a certain way. And the nuance of if I wrote those paragraphs and found the quotes and the process of reading and pulling out the quotes, mm, that's the yummy part of learning. But what these the I mean, I don't know what's happening with AI. I think it's a great tool. It's interesting. It's got a lot it can provide, but it does have limitations. If you don't understand the limitations and you don't understand what it might be robbing you of moving through the imperfection of problem solving, the imperfection of making a mistake, and that being okay. Uh, let's get handmade. Let's get into the craft revolution, and which is only just emerging. And that's my take on your Stump the Professor questions. All right, we got one done. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. See you all.